Hello, everybody. We're just going to wait until we hit the 2 o'clock mark, and then we'll start the webinar. Let's make a start then. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this roundtable event. My name is Catherine Kennedy. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director here at Intuitive. Just to confirm with everybody that the webinar will be recorded and you will receive a link to the recording after the event. So if you do want to rewatch or share with other people in your organisation, then you're most welcome. We're aiming to have the conversation part of today's event for about 40 minutes or so to allow some time for questions from everybody participating at the end. If you could please add your questions in the Q&A chat facility that should be available to you all, and then we'll pick those and answer those at the end. We may not get time to answer all the questions depending on how many we got, but we'll try our best to answer the questions that are that we feel will be of general interest to the whole audience. So I'd just like to take a couple of moments to introduce our panel members today. We're very pleased to have three really experienced industry speakers. So firstly, Deborah Hawkins. Deborah is a highly experienced industry analyst from Keypoint Intelligence, and she's been active in the document imaging and printing industry since 1989.
Hello, everybody.
Secondly, we have David Malan, who's the sales director for DocuWare for the UK and Ireland. David has over 18 years of document management experience, and since 2012, he's been focusing on DocuWare's electronic content management solution. And last but by no means least, we have Roger Stocker, the CEO, my boss of Intuitive Business Intelligence. Roger has extensive experience in building IT solutions and specifically in analytics over the last 10 years. I've just heard somebody say that they can't hear me on the chat. I don't know, is anybody else having trouble hearing me? Could I get a thumbs up or is everybody okay? Okay, sounds like it might be an issue on their end then. Okay, I'll carry on. Great, thank you, everybody. So the aims of the session really are, because we have Deborah here from Keypoint, is really to give you an industry analyst viewpoint of the future of the work environment, the challenges and opportunities that presents to organisations participating today, and to really look at the raising awareness of the opportunity within print resellers, managed service providers, to leverage existing relationships, show how we can use analytics data to identify opportunities for digital transformation. So I'd like to start by inviting Deborah as an industry analyst. You're obviously constantly researching market trends around digitisation. Would you like to just give us an introduction and a summary of what we need to know?
Sure, and thank you, Catherine, and thanks for the chance to show our insight here today. And I guess the first question that we need to answer for those of us coming from a print background and who consider print to be their bread and butter business, like myself, how much print will actually remain? And here is our view. You can see, I hope you can all see the slide here. Here's our view of the pre versus the post-pandemic view of page volume in Western Europe. This is page volume that is measured in billions of one-sided A4 pages. And this is print in the workplace, which we refer to as either an office location or a home location, where print is being created for business purposes. This does not include production print, it's just that workplace. And what you can see here is that as of the end of 2023, page volume dipped down from about 600 billion pages to less than 400 billion in 2020 and 2021. What we refer to as those pandemic years then recovered somewhat in 2022. And by the end of 2023, it reached a new, what we refer to as a baseline level, which is about 19% below the pre-pandemic level. In case you're wondering how we measure this, it's multifaceted. We have access to more than 1 million machines and their monthly data for tracking. Plus, we have 30 years, more than 30 years of historical data where we've been mapping paper production, machines in field, and average monthly print volumes. And our prediction for the next 5 years shows that that print volume is not coming back. It's predicted to decline at a further rate of about 4 to 5% per annum as we settle into the new level of hybrid working and as digital transformation has accelerated. The second question we need to answer is what about return to office and how much is hybrid work? Through those pandemic years, our acceptance of alternative working forms has expanded considerably. Hybrid work is now a reality for 25 to 30% of all knowledge workers, and full-time remote has leveled at about 15 to 20%. Our research that looks at input from both general office workers and from company decision makers show that hybrid has really solidified at a level of about 2.4 days per week that are spent at home. So that means that on any given day, as many as 50% of knowledge workers are not in the office. So our acceptance has changed. Not only are sneakers considered to be acceptable workplace attire these days, also hybrid work has become the norm. I argue that it wasn't actually the pandemic that made those work styles pivot. It needed that lockdown period before the majority of decision makers could actually open up to change and allow it to happen. Of course, there are exceptions. There'll always be country differences and differences due to the structure of business sectors by company size, for example. Those micro companies tend to have the least flexibility, and the mid to large size have the most flexibility. And in the past year, we've seen a multitude of return to office policy making and preferences have emerged, which have made hybrid much more structured. And the framework we now have is that it's one that's going to stay, at least for the midterm. And why is that? That is very much related to the current labour market. It is referred to in economic terms as buoyant, and that means that most people are in employment. In addition, the workforce is aging and the newcomers are in a position to really demand that level of hybridity or even less working hours or better lifestyles. Very much enforced location flexibility in what we call a people-centric marketplace, where job happiness is very much related to productivity. Which brings us to that third question we need to answer. How much can we increase our productivity? And that is very much about digital transformation. As you can see here, the most common response in our research to adapting to hybrid work is increasing digital processes. That catalyst again, the lockdown or the changing workforce or the acceptance of, all of those have culminated in the acceleration of digitization. Investment money is being heavily funneled into all kinds of DX projects. There's also a perception that companies that are technology leaders in adoption and implementation are more likely to favor those hybrid work forms. As you can see here, it's not the only area where investment is taking place, but it's the most prominent. It's really top of the list for those spenders. We also have many ways to measure rates of digitization, including how much is being scanned, for example, and at which location and the throughput volumes. And that all helps us to understand the differing rates of digitization by different verticals and by company size to really predict what's coming next.
Thanks, Deborah. That's a fantastic insight, and it's really good to have some, proper research there to sort of really frame the discussion that we're going to have this afternoon. David, can I maybe go to you next and just ask what you see as the future of the workplace? You're obviously out there with customers, so often, can you tell us what you're seeing in the customers that you work with in this area?
Yeah, it's the question that's always asked, right? That's the one that everybody wants to know is where are we going and what is it that we have to adjust to, or that we have to get used to, or that we have to onboard to do to actually be successful in the future, to continue growing our businesses and even be around in a couple of years' time. And we actually did a survey a little while ago to talk about new technology and what new technology are doing to business. And there's so many people that said, yeah, new technology is incredibly important. If you take a look at AI, for example, it's incredibly important, but we haven't necessarily implemented it. So the future of the workspace is simply this. You'll see that, and if I can say it right off the bat, that the younger generation will employ the technology quicker, and the younger CEOs will be quicker in adopting new technology to help to drive their businesses. But it's all about profitability and how productive I can be with the amount of resources that I have available. And of course, technology plays a massive role in those.
Great, thank you. And Deborah, I think you had something to add on here, didn't you, in terms of a bit more research around this as well?
I do. I have another little slide here. Let me just pull that back in again. So you're totally correct, David. Automation and oops, that's the wrong page. Automation and AI are totally high on the list here. There's other factors that are coming in as well. Sustainable work ethics are really increasing in importance, but we should also talk about, are people actually paying for sustainable practices right now, the same as are they actually paying for AI enhanced types of work? I think every company is looking at many of these factors and never just one. And that's one of the reasons that we've seen the actual discussion around new work forms or the future of work. It's being raised up to a new level. It's very much become a C-suite issue where we're talking about some IT investments, but also the effect on people. So we're including HR, we're including the whole management team in that. There's a whole combination of things that new work is opening up the discussion.
That's great. Yeah. Thanks, Deborah. Sorry, David, over to you. Back to you, rather.
Yeah, no, completely agreed. And it's incredible to see how people's minds are shifting to things that they believe is important or perceive to be as important, and might have different opinions than other people. But you see those, and it's great to see them on the screen, because it talks about the fact that I need to be efficient and that I need to use technology for it. I need to be able to fit into this hybrid environment where I'm working, where I'm adapting is maybe the right word. But also the sustainability is coming through quite significantly, and you see how people are literally asking those questions to understand what is it going to mean, what is the impact that we're having on the environment, what is the impact that we're having on society, and all of those play a massive role in decision making.
That's great, thanks. Roger, I was going to move over to you now to talk about, in your experience with customers, some of the key things that are driving customers to adopt digital transformation, either with customers or just in your general experience.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Yeah, really to reiterate what's been said. I mean, I've just been traveling for the last couple of months across Europe and North America, where we do most of our business. And a lot of the things that we're seeing in the UK, I'm seeing all over the world. And that is, there's less people in the economy post-COVID. the people who are wanting to work more flexibly and wanting to work, different hours, so it's not always the traditional office hours. And the other thing that's happening is because there's not enough people, there's massive wage inflation, and we've seen that, how difficult that is to recruit even in our own business. So I think there's not, the fundamental is there's not enough people to drive people's economies, which is why you're seeing low growth. In the UK we've got our election and we're talking extensively about low growth at the moment. So for me it's really simple. If you've not got enough people, the only way you're going to do it and grow is to automate. And I think there's masses of things to go. So we're all in the technology sector. We think everything's in technology, but what I'm seeing is, especially in COVID, lots of big organizations automated their front ends, and everything was done over the web. But when you get to the back end, a lot of it is still even paper driven. And I've just recently bought a new house. I submitted so many documents electronically online, only to get a paper document back to sign. Of course, what do? I sign it and then I scan it back in and send it to my financial advisor. So I think people is driving it. There's still lots and lots of paper processes, and I think AI has got a long way to help. But I think in the short term, there's probably some basics of plumbing that people need to get done, and just in those basic, automative processes, and that's why you see that sector really growing fast at the moment.
That's great. So, and we can see that there's lots of demand for automation and lots of really good reasons. So what's stopping customers then? What do we see as the challenges for customers in adopting, in transitioning really into that sort of digital transformation?
Yeah, that's a good point, Catherine, if I can take that one.
Sure.
So our research has said that, yes, there's a number of challenges. In fact, IT decision makers tell us that only about 25% of IT decision makers say that, oh, I didn't have any challenges. That, of course, means that 75% of them did. And what are those challenges? And really top of my list is very much those employee habits. So coaching and training workers to change the way they do things and to teach them to accept that change. That means spending a lot of time hand-holding and showing them new examples and ways to go forward. That's very much for me what I see as the top challenge in accepting digital transformation. And you have to try and make sure that every worker is on board with the company initiatives or even business line initiatives. And that's a challenge in itself.
Absolutely. And what about you, David? What would your sort of perspective on that be?
Yeah, it's great having the percentages and really understanding how people are thinking, how their minds work, or what they think the challenges are, right? But I think every business is quite different, and that every industry is quite different. And when I say quite different, I guess that percentage is the important one. But what we see within our business and what somebody else sees that's within a completely different industry is also different. And it's also because some of those industries have not adopted technology as quickly as others, and certain industries have been heavily impacted by the lack of employment. It's crazy, that we actually now talk about the lack of employment, that we're actually now talking about the fact that there's not enough people in the economy. It's completely crazy. Before, we had to be worried that people want to make their staff complement less because of the cost impact on their business, but now they actually don't have a choice. They have to automate, otherwise they won't grow. So those key factors are most certainly what is it that's important by business, what's currently lacking, what's keeping me behind, and that's where data analytics becomes incredibly important, because if I don't really understand what is going on within the data in my business, I can't understand which areas of my business I need to improve.
Absolutely. Yeah, completely agree, David. And I think, Roger, you probably would want to amplify that point a little as well, wouldn't you, at this point?
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting. Dave's point about, not enough people that we've just talked about, outside of Intuitive, I'm lucky enough to be involved in a couple of not-for-profits, and where I act as a sort of non-executive trustee, and because we don't have enough staff, we end up outsourcing to contractors, which are 2.5 times more expensive. So you get caught in a bit of a perfect storm that you need to spend resource on looking where to start to automate, but you don't have the resource because you don't have enough people to start. The one thing I would say with that is, I think looking at, it was interesting. Deborah talked about printing's gone down by 20%, and but actually that means there's still 80% of printed documents out there. And for me, a printed document is really simple. It's just a manual business process. So I actually think, most organizations, that they want to automate. They don't really know where to start. Yeah, where do you start? And I think it's this thing about one bit at a time. And I would say, go and look at your printed documents. Go and see which documents that you're printing the most of, because that is probably a really good idea of a good place to start.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Roger. And I think that sort of leads us nicely in. So the first half of the conversation has been very much around the market and the challenges for organizations and for our customers. Let's now move on to think about the actual print and NPS providers now. So obviously there's huge opportunity in the market there with what we've just identified and talked about, but there's also some challenges as well. So Roger, would you like to dive in first maybe and just talk about what you think maybe some of the key challenges are for print resellers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a bit of a perfect storm at the moment, because what we saw that volumes are down. So print resellers will traditionally make their money on devices and clicks. So nobody's lost any customers because nobody stopped printing altogether. So you still have exactly the same number of customers to service, which means roughly you've got to have the same costs in your organization. But your revenue per customers has gone down. So if you've got the same number of customers, but smaller revenue and the same staff, that means your profits are going to be squeezed. And really, the big challenge for MPS providers is, okay, how do we take those customers and grow new revenue streams? And that's and when you're getting into those new revenue streams, you start with a print company, and you might want to move into supporting Office, or you might want to move into digital transformation, and that requires a different relationship, because you're dealing with the operational units, not with the IT departments, and B, you're dealing with other organizations who are set up specifically to do that. And I think, again, for those MPS providers, the one thing they do understand is they do understand the printing habits of their customers, and they've got the ability to understand the printing habits of the customers. And I think for them to go back to that and start looking at that print data and analysing it, because the customers don't have the resource to analyse it, and helping them to shape their investment decisions is a really, I think, where the challenge and the opportunity for them is.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So given that, I guess given that challenge, but then also the opportunity that's there as well with that, to provide that sort of that service and that added value to customers. Deborah, are there some specific vertical markets that are moving quicker to digitization than others that you could maybe share some information on?
Yes, there certainly are. I've got another slide that is one I prepped earlier, I should say. I don't know why it keeps springing back to the one that we've already seen, but yeah, which verticals are on what digital trajectories, if you like. You can see here of the 4 largest European countries, so that's the UK, France, Germany, and Italy, how the workplace print volume is split out by vertical. So you see the largest vertical to print is healthcare, and that only includes all of the hospitals, that includes all healthcare and social work activities, so a huge range of businesses. They equate for around 20% of the print volume in our industry. And then you're seeing here the different trajectories between 2022 compared to where we believe they will be in 2027. And there you can see those that are expected to decline the most and those that are expected to hover around the same level. We look at this in terms of how many processes are currently digitized, and that differs greatly not only by vertical, but also size of the company. Generally, those larger organizations will be much further down that than that train than a smaller organization. But we also look at the types of documents that are actually used in each of those sectors, who the document owners are, and what's the maximum level of digitization. Not every company can be entirely digital. There are some that have a requirement for paper and will have in the future. And then we also look at factors like how much investment money is available for that transition to digital. So as I said, there are many smaller companies that are harder to convince, but those are the ones that we're going to be seeing longer out into the future that are going to be making that switch. Some of these verticals are already at a pretty high level of digitization. For example, finance and insurance. We used to say 10 years ago that they were the largest one in terms of print volume in our industry. They're certainly not today, as you can see here, because they've already made a lot of that switch.
Thank you. Thanks, Deborah. David, anything to add on that in terms of what you're seeing? Obviously, this is very much what your whole business is about, isn't it? Is digital transformation. So do you sort of see similar patterns here with where you're having success as an organization as well?
I could lie and say I see exactly the same, but I think there's some differences to what I expected, and this actually makes a lot of sense. Let me rather put it that way. I mean, it's surprising because we thought it might even decline quicker than what it would. It's also surprising to see that some industries would actually ramp up where other industries might not. Some industries will be quicker in digital transformation. Some will still be printing and might actually be printing more. So and understanding that and seeing that in the data is excellent. It gives you an absolutely new perspective. So I would agree on the general trends. It might obviously also be different reasons, and it might also be also just the way that those businesses are and how related they are to technology versus other industries that's more closer to technology and understands technology better.
Sure. And I guess it's not just the vertical specific sort of focus, is it? I guess you've got focus around particular sort of business processes which are maybe common across organizations. So is there anything on that you would want to highlight as well in terms of where you're seeing the most, obvious sort of opportunities for digital transformation?
Look, when we're talking about print providers specifically, then it's all about what are we comfortable with, and importantly, what is our workforce comfortable with? What can they actually do, and what are they comfortable in doing, and what can they talk about? If we take a look at our trends within DocuWare, we're seeing a shift into more holistic management of content. Right, so we're seeing a shift away from purely within finance, where initially we would have done more than 70% of our initial business in finance. That is reduced now to 50%. The number of opportunities sitting within that 50% is still exactly the same, but the rest is ramped up quite significantly. And this, of course, means that we are focusing on different industries and within different stakeholders within businesses. And this is unfortunately for some service providers quite difficult to adopt because of the more narrow view that they had within business before. So it's quite difficult for some service providers to broaden my view significantly to include all of the processes within the business and all of the departments in the business and really understand their challenges. But is it important for them to start differentiating and offering additional value add on top of their services? Absolutely, it is.
Yeah.
I think, Catherine, it was interesting. I was recently at the DocuWare conference, and I sold digitization systems when they were called document management systems 15 years ago. And when I sold it, 100% of it was in finance, and 90% of that was accounts payable. And I saw a couple of observations that I saw was one was actually the reduction of finance, falling down to half. But actually, what was more exciting was to see lots of the other areas, such as HR and compliance, starting to grow. And David, I don't know if you can sort of comment on some of the other processes. And the other point that I picked up from your conference was where people might have started in finance and stayed in finance. You're seeing quite a large growth in companies starting in one functional area and moving across, which I think is something that we've not seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. In actual fact, don't think it's trade secrets. We've actually reduced the number of new customers that we sold to this year, but the revenue has increased significantly because the customers that we have at the moment are expanding processes into other areas of their business. And we have seen a significant increase in customers adding licenses and implementing additional processes within their organization to further increase their automation. We've always been strong in areas like manufacturing and construction. We've always been very good in retail and especially in logistics. And this is like a worldwide trend. But also, if you take a look at certain countries and certain regions, there's certain areas where we are even better than in another. For example, in the Middle East, DocuWare is incredibly strong within the finance sector and within the healthcare sector, whereas in the UK, we do see certain movements within healthcare, but we haven't seen exactly the same movement within finance. But it's directly related to people's perception, what they're thinking about, and what the sales force are actually considering as their next potential action, and how the partners are adopting the technology and pushing it out to their customers. Because the use case is there, right? If there's content that I need to manage, if there's processes that I need to automate, I need people to do it. And if I don't have enough people, I just can't throughput enough.
Great, thanks, David. So thinking about the audience here, obviously very sort of print and managed print services heavy. Can we maybe think of some examples where customers are embracing data, either internally to improve or externally to deliver a better experience to end customers? Roger, would you like to maybe start on that one for us?
Yeah, I think you're right, Catherine. Starting with print analytics, when I started, we started talking to the MPS providers 3-4 years ago, and when you talk to people about analytics, they said, "Oh yeah, we're looking at the scan data." Mm-hmm. Yeah, and all they would look at the scan data because that was electronic documents coming in, and how could they improve them? But scanning is only really about 8% of the data, so 92% of it is printing or copying. So really, you want to focus on that print data, and look at what at the moment what documents you're printing, who's printing them. When in the business cycle is it, yeah? And it becomes far more about, what is that content that's being printed and how does it relate to the business, as opposed to the traditional arguments, which is pages and which are color and which is black and white. And probably, I think on the print, one of the areas I've seen lots of companies start is really almost just, they've got lots and lots of forms, they've got lots of documents on the internet which are being printed out, but they don't know which ones are being printed and by which office it is. So I had one organisation that I worked with had about 800 staff over 75 offices. Yeah, and again, we looked at, they had about 1,000 forms on the internet, so we started analysing what was printed, and what we found was we started off with finding one process which wasn't even the top 10 of printed documents, but it was a document that was printed time and time again. And actually, although it was only a small document, the amount of manual processing time around it that the staff had to do in the process was huge. So I think starting to look at the print one is one. And I think it's not as simple as just go and do that, find your print process, go and implement it into electronic document workflow like DocuWare and say, that's great, we've done it. As soon as you get that process into electronic form, you can start monitoring the process a lot closer. Yeah. And actually, we're doing lots of work, looking at DocuWare processes at the moment where there still might be manual intervention, but suddenly you can work out actually which staff are better at different types of work. So you can then use your analytics with your process management to start making your people even more efficient, because you can see these people are better at this type of work rather than this type of work. And then that has loads of knock-on effects like staff satisfaction and retention, as well as the obvious further automation points.
Yeah, Roger, that is so important, and it's actually not only the staff and where they fit in, but now I know, right? I know in this area of my business I've got a serious bottleneck, and that bottleneck might only be slowing the process by 10%, but might be affecting my revenue and my go-to-market in such an extreme way that it has a massive impact on my profitability. And that's why visibility of the process is just as important as actually automating the process itself.
Yeah, and I think going into the future, David, we might even take that a stage further, because at the moment you can look within your own organization, but as all this data is starting to go into the cloud, we see a future where customers might be subscribing into a service where what's good, well, why not just compare us, look at ourselves, let's compare ourselves to other people in the same sector, but do that anonymously, so we can start to get more feedback to where we need to improve as a business. And I think there's a huge potential there, and that's really where the AI really starts to come in to be able to spot those trends.
Absolutely.
Great, thanks guys. Well, I do have one final question, but I just wanted to remind people before we do this final question that if you do have any questions for any of our brilliant panelists today, then please just do pop them in the Q&A chat, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. So that's just a little reminder on that one before we go into the last question, which is really just, I'm going to go to all of you, one by one. But if you had one piece of advice for anybody embarking on a digital transformation or data enhancement project, then what would it be? So Deborah, shall we start with you on this wrap-up question?
Yeah, sure. I definitely think go to look for a specialist in this space. Of course, not just because we've got DocuWare and we've got Intuitive here in the room today, but these are definitely specialists in their spaces. They've been doing this for a long time. They've got a lot of data to compare with, as Roger just said. I think that's really important to be able to benchmark yourself to other companies of a similar size, in a similar vertical, in a similar segment. So definitely look for a specialist. Don't try to do everything in-house, but there are also good combinations of complementary in-house and out-house specialists that can work with you to really look at what would be best for your business to bring so much more joy into work forms to make us all more productive.
Great, thanks, Deborah. And Roger, what about you?
Yeah, I think for me, start small. Yeah, use that print data to identify a process, really get one or two processes done well so you can build momentum in your organization, and then roll out further.
Great, thank you. And David, a nugget of advice from you on this one?
I like going last because now everybody said the smart stuff and now I have to think of something else. I'm just kidding.
Sorry, I didn't do that on purpose.
No problem at all. Look, what we've seen, what we see in the market, and especially if you're close to the sales process, you need to understand how buyers are thinking and what buyers are doing on a day-to-day basis. And what we are seeing, as well as what companies like, for example, Keypoint Intelligence and other review companies are seeing, is that buyers learn so much more about what they want to purchase before they even speak to a salesperson or to a consultant or to a pre-sales consultant. I mean, I bought a car the other day and I didn't speak to a single salesperson, not one. I didn't go into the branch. I didn't go test drive the car. I'm assuming that they're all good cars these days. I hope so. Don't have it yet, so I hope it's a good one. But people do not want to engage anymore, right? There's risks in that, but there's also a huge amount of information online. Educate yourself. There's so much information that you can learn from just reading some blog posts and joining some podcasts and just understand what is it that technology can do for my business, right? And the one thing that I can say to all the business leaders here is we very often don't know that we have a problem. All right. Very often. My wife tells me this the whole time. I apparently have a lot of problems. The fact is that we've been doing stuff the same way for forever, right? And on invoice processing, we've always been processing it manually. We've been checking it manually. On managing my delivery notes, I've always been checking them manually. On my contracts, I've always been sending them out manually. I've been checking them manually. And I know there's some exceptions, but we've always been doing it this way. So we don't really identify that it could potentially be a problem that I can improve, or should I call it a challenge or a bottleneck? So really go read up, go understand what the technology is all about, because there's so much technology out there. And the challenge for us as technology companies are to constantly make sure that the technology that we offer our customers are right up there and it can really help them improve their business.
Yeah. And David, picking up on your point, I think you're right that, you know, the buyer journey is changing. And yeah, I think you've got to really spend that extra time. So you've almost got to specialize in a market or in some processes to be successful. Yeah, I think that the day of just being generic, I don't think are there. I think customers are looking for a lot more. So you've got to pick, you know, for our partners, I'd be saying pick a process or pick some processes within a vertical and really go and understand them, because then you've got something that's repeatable. And I think if you do that, that will enable you to grow more and grow faster.
Well said. Fact.
Yeah. Well, that's great. In fact, that sort of leads me nicely on to we have a question in the Q&A, which is around what positioning strategies would you have for migration to digitization? That's from Nathan Jureski. I don't know. I'll just leave it open to the three of you as to who would like to pick up on that, or maybe you all have a comment on that.
I'll give it a shot. Nathan, thank you for the question. I guess the question could be answered from the perspective of a service provider or a end user, and somebody that needs to digitize their own business or needing to transform my business into a business that offers digitization to our customers. But once again, I think what we just said is very important. Understand what's out there, understand what is available. And it's a little bit the other way around, because if I had to engage with you in your sales organization, I'll ask you loads of questions depending on the area of the business where you are focusing, and I'll pick up on some pointers of where we could potentially help to improve. But the same can be done by own research. The same can be done by literally asking AI these days about, I have a business that currently operates in this way. What technology is out there available to me that can help me to change? And what Roger said earlier is most probably the most important. Take it, eat the elephant bite at a time. There we go.
Yeah.
I've always heard it, and I've never used it often. Make sure that you implement, make sure that you solve small problems, because otherwise you're creating bigger problems in the business when change management just becomes too much and users can't adopt it quick enough.
Yeah, maybe I can jump in at that point. So I'm assuming this question is coming from a reseller perspective. How do they migrate to having a digital offering and away from print, presumably? And we've seen very different examples of including digital services within the actual print offering, as well as splitting them out separately. I think we've seen examples where both have worked. Organizations, resellers really have to look at their own makeup and their own customer base to look at which would be the most optimal. Is it best to have our current offering and our current branding and transition that into a digital space, or is it better, more worthwhile to actually split it out and have separate offering?
And I think going on from that, I think especially for our partners in the print resellers, let's not forget where you come from. Yeah, because look at how you can leverage what you've already got, the skills you've already got, the customers you've got, the data you've already got. Yeah, I see lots of organizations, and mistakes that I've made in my career is you start off and you forget your heritage, and you forget what makes you a good company. So spend some time looking about what makes you good, and then apply that, and that is something we see good. So if you're selling print, yeah, you can move into process automation, because it's it's a natural jump. Don't try and make the jump straight to try and being an AI provider, because you're not competing with your strengths. So that, I think, would be my feedback.
Thanks, Roger. That's great. There was a question put in the chat rather than the Q&A a little while ago, which was which countries, from Morton Raven. I'm not sure if Morton, if you're still on the call, if you'd like to just clarify that question in the Q&A, because I think it was maybe relating to something that somebody was maybe it was something that Deborah was presenting at that point. So I don't know if
when I showed the print volume by vertical, that was for the 4 largest countries in Europe, so UK, Germany, France and Italy, and that's probably prompting the actual question. My country, perhaps some of the smaller, more technology affine countries, the Nordics, for example, the Netherlands, for example, tend to be a little bit further along that digital transition, that trajectory, in comparison to some of the larger, more slow moving and less technology affine countries.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Deborah. Well, I don't think we have any more questions. We are coming up to sort of 45 minutes in, and I think we promised everybody that we would keep it prompt. So I think at this point I'm going to just thank our 3 panelists very much for all of their insights. I hope everybody's found that really helpful, maybe giving you some food for thought as you go back into your own work this afternoon and going forwards. So thank you very much, Deborah, David and Roger. Thank you to all of our participants for joining us today. It's been great to have so many of you on board. And you will all be receiving a recording once the recording's rendered of the session. And there'll also be a follow-up email coming out from me later today, which will have the contact details for all of our presenters. So if there's anything specific that you would like to follow up with any of them, where they've sparked your interest, or you've got a further query, or you'd like to place a large order with Roger for a huge contract, then please do reach out, and we'd all be delighted to help you. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.